Hey everyone, this is Kieran from MSK Physio. Today's exercise is going to be our anterior scalene muscle, which is a neck muscle. It's a backup, or not really backup, but an accessory breathing muscle that helps us breathe in to get extra air into our lungs. It's got some jobs in moving our neck forward and rotating our neck and rotating, side flexing our neck. So we're going to be looking at a bit of a combination of those things. If you've had anything like thoracic outlet symptoms, so things like pins and needles, numbness, tingling into the hands, just make sure you're getting double checked by a local healthcare practitioner before you embark on this kind of exercise. Not to say that things could get worse or better, you just want to make sure that you've got the right diagnosis and that you're doing the right treatment for the right thing. There is potential to exacerbate with this kind of exercise, so just being cautious of that. And we'll talk a little bit more about some other precautions as we get into the actual exercise today, okay? So if you feel like you've had some difficulty in this area of your neck and it's hard, say if I go this way or this way, and this area feels tight, or in this area over here I feel a little bit uncomfortable, then this might be a really useful exercise for you. So with any exercise, we're always considering its attachment points, because for the muscle to go through a lengthening and a shortening phase, then those attachment points have to get closer and further away from each other. And that's how we try to bias certain muscles. You know, as we said in a lot of other videos, we're never truly isolating muscles, particularly in the neck, really, because there's just so many of them. But what we can do is try and bias some of their movements so that we can hopefully get a therapeutic effect out of that exercise. Now in the anterior scalene, its attachment points are going to be more that lower cervical, so maybe like, you know, C4, C3-ish, down into C6 territory. So on these transverse processes, a little bit on the front of that transverse process, and it's going to go down into our first rib. So we're talking about attachment points down in this area and very much on the side part of our neck. It has the potential as a muscle that when it's working with its other side, so the two are working together, it's going to flex my neck forward. It can work independently, so it can side flex me, and it can also create a little bit of, it's got a little rotation arm as well. It might be a muscle that's implicated in things like thoracic outlet syndrome, particularly if you have symptoms down the arm. That has to do with some of the brachial plexus trunks, and also kind of how the arteries and veins come out from down below and swoop up and go down underneath our clavicle. It's an important muscle to have capacity in. It's a backup breathing muscle as well that we mentioned before. It's going to help bring that first rib up to help us breathe. One of the considerations, though, that's very important is that because of its attachment points, it's going to directly impact basically its foramen, or these spaces on the side of the vertebrae where we have an artery going up the side of the spine. And it's an artery that for some people in certain populations, particularly older or people with things like cardiovascular disease, so we're thinking like smokers, potentially diabetics, or people that have had very quick whiplashy type movements, that vertebral basal artery might be a little bit compromised. And so this exercise is going to directly ask that artery to stretch and shorten. And so if you have any symptoms of things like dizziness while doing this, double vision, difficulty swallowing, difficulty speaking, you feel like maybe you're going to faint, you get any numbness through here, or you feel like your eyes start to beat a little bit, you may not even be sure that that's happening. But if you get any of that stuff, please stop right away. Take responsibility for your health and well-being, and go see a local therapist or go see your GP, and just make sure you're actually safe to continue doing this exercise, because you don't want to hurt that artery. That's and when I say that, I mean that you really don't even want to risk having that artery be hurt in any way. So just make sure that you get the clearance, and then if you get the clearance, then instead of using my video as a guide, get a local therapist to help guide you, and maybe my video becomes a reference and you guys can use that if you find it relevant, okay? But for others who have maybe just symptoms down into the hand, or just have a tightness on the side of their neck and they just want to be able to move their neck sideways a little bit easier, then please continue with this. So it's attachment points, it's got some rotation ability, right? So unlike our middle scalene exercise, which is more of a pure side flexor, we need to think about the rotation component too. So what I'm going to do is aim the edge of my eyebrow here towards my collarbone, or particularly around my ACJ joint up here. Now, for some of you, you may not have that flexibility over here, so you're going to put a pillow or a little yoga block to fill that space, and as you get stronger through these muscles, they'll lengthen for you and you'll be able to lay quite comfortably like this. I'm going to turn to look at my ACJ, and that's usually on the shirt where the seam comes down here and it creates that T interface, give or take. So I'm going to look right into there, and what I'm going to try and do is bring my eye closer to that point. And I'm going to keep looking at it as I go down. And while the focus kind of seems to be me looking and going through this movement, what I'm actually looking at doing is trying to bring these transverse processes, the side of my neck, closer into that first rib. So I'm interested in this space right in here, getting closer together, okay? Now, you might feel fatigue somewhere else in the neck. That's okay, not a bad thing. As you work through this, like any exercise, you're going to get some new sensations. The trick here is to keep looking at that part the whole time, okay? Now for me, I'm getting a little bit of fatigue kind of back in here, kind of more like levator scap area, upper trap. And so maybe these muscles, because they're synergistic and side flexion, are helping out a little bit too. So as I said, we're never purely isolating. I'm just trying to bias that. And so I didn't feel much fatigue in this anterior scalene. Maybe its fatigability is pretty good. Maybe I wasn't actually stretching the muscle, because by stretching a muscle, we then feel it and we get a little bit of feedback and have an idea of where it is in space, aka proprioception. So I'll double check. I'm going to try one more time. I'm actually going to pull my ribs down. So how can I do that? I'm going to exhale, and then I'm going to work in that exhale territory. So my first rib is depressed a bit, and then that way I have potential for maybe greater stretch. So, okay. Keeping it a little bit of exhale, I'm just going to breathe a little bit on top of that. And I'm going to go through the same movement. And now, I still feel my sort of levator territory kicking in, but I'm getting a little bit more into this pocket in here, into this scalene triangle. Nice. From this angle here, so you guys can see, I'm looking this way, and then I'm going up and down. Okay. So really useful muscle to have capacity in. Muscles need to be pliable and strong and have good ability to not just stretch at both ends, but also stretch horizontally across their bellies. We've got a lot of nerves, this brachial plexus, or more the trunks coming out of the spine, and they have to slide and move against these muscles. And so you want these muscles to be nice and plump and healthy. Some of the hypertrophy that we see in thoracic outlet syndrome may not necessarily correlate with good load capacity in these muscles. If anyone has anything different research-wise that can indicate some specificness around that, then please share. But tends to be that I'll give people strengthening exercises for these muscles if they have thoracic outlet syndrome, and then we'll see an increased ability for nerve sliding and a little less irritation and compression if the scalene compression is the primary issue. So please proceed with caution with these. You've got some of your precautions from earlier in the video. I might be repeating them again. It might sound like I'm repeating them again. That's probably because I am repeating them again, but that's because it's important, and they're very important sort of stop points. And if you have those things, please go and get checked out before continuing with this exercise, okay? Me giving you this advice is more advice, and it's not me telling you what to do, but you need to take responsibility for your own health and well-being. And so if you have any of those symptoms, please go get clearance from GP or local physio, and just make sure that you're safe to continue doing this, okay? If you like this video, then please hit like below. Otherwise, to check out more of our content in the future, you can subscribe to our channel by clicking our logo over here. And to check out our latest video, click up here.